This was the man who was paralyzed due to a debilitating illness and went on to become the president who lifted a nation out of crisis. Franklin Delano Roosevelt became the 33rd president of the United States of America in 1933 when the country was deep into a Great Depression.
Millions of people were out of work, many businesses and industries were crumbling, and the banking system was collapsing.
And right here is the memorial in his honor, designed by the renowned architect Louis Kahn, and it is called Four Freedoms State Park. And it is stunning here on the southern tip of Roosevelt Island, tucked between Manhattan and Queens.
But how did a man handicapped by disease become president in the first place? Well, it wasn't an easy journey. August 1921, a 39-year-old Roosevelt, filled with life, working as a lawyer in New York City, standing at a tall 6'2", he was already headed towards a glorious political career. Franklin was determined to follow the footsteps of his idol and cousin Theodore to become president. But that all came crashing down on August 11th when he was vacationing with his family in Campobello Island, and he developed a fever of 102 degrees Fahrenheit and his left leg was giving out on him.
And perhaps this was just temporary, a common flu or just general illness. However, he started having bladder and bowel dysfunction. Any slight touch to his skin would feel like piercing needles, and he started losing the feeling in his legs.
The doctors diagnosed him with polio. At the time, it was better known as infantile paralysis, and it was a disease spreading fast throughout America and Europe.
For most cases, polio feels like the common flu, but for 1% of cases, it affects the central nervous system, causing paralysis. Over 15,000 people per year were being paralyzed by polio in the early 1900s.
Polio actually plagued humanity for thousands of years. For example, there's apparent depictions of withered and deformed legs that are a result often of polio, featured in ancient Egyptian art. Roosevelt would never regain control of his legs. In 1926, Roosevelt bought a personal retreat at Warm Springs, Georgia, that was thought to have healing waters. He proceeded to live an active life, going sailing and fishing, and would eventually rebuild a lot of his upper body strength. In 1927, he turned his retreat into the Georgia Warm Springs Foundation in order to help other people afflicted with polio, and he put one of his closest friends, Basil O'Connor, in charge. He did everything in his power to appear able-bodied in the public eye.
No longer can he depend on his physical stature for his stage presence. He had to become a great orator, and that he did. Usually he would be holding with an iron grip onto the podium, but he would use his head to gesticulate and to really give his speeches a really big emphasis.
In 1938, the president founded the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis. His friend Basil O'Connor was also put in charge. This foundation kickstarted one of the largest fundraising campaigns in American history up to that point, the March of Dimes. Hence why FDR to this day is on the dime. But as war spread throughout Europe and Asia, America was determined to stay isolationist. World War I left a bad taste in Americans. However, President Roosevelt knew the existential threat that the Germans and Japanese posed to this country.
And on January 6, 1941, after winning an unprecedented third term, he read this speech, citing the four freedoms that everyone around the world deserves. In the future days which we seek to make secure, we look forward to a world founded upon four essential human freedoms. The first freedom
is freedom of speech and expression everywhere in the world.
On December 7, 1941, after the devastating attacks on Pearl Harbor, the United States declared war on Japan. On December 11th, Germany and Italy declared war on the US. The country now mobilized all of its military, industrial, and economic might to stop the Axis powers.
On April 12, 1945, President Roosevelt, who was spending time at his retreat in Warm Springs, Georgia, died of a brain hemorrhage. This man would go on to become known as one of the greatest presidents in American history.
And his efforts to stop polio eventually led to the development of the vaccine made by Dr. Jonas Salk, and also an oral vaccine developed by Dr. Albert Sabin in the 1950s. Luckily, polio has been eradicated in the US, but still lingers in certain parts of the world today. Since 1985, Rotary International has been the leader in the fight to eradicate polio for good worldwide. worldwide. They have a global network of 1.4 million people. They go into the far corners of the world to work with communities in immunizing people against polio. Places such as the remote mountains of Pakistan, where access to proper healthcare is scant. They have helped immunize over 3 billion children. They have also contributed more than $2.7 billion to eradication efforts.
Let's not allow the efforts of President Roosevelt to die in vain, nor let the hard work of the people at Rotary International to go unnoticed. If you want to learn more about the efforts to end polio, go to endpolio.org. Stay curious, my friends.